Hello everybody, welcome to Technoid Tanner. My name is Ken B. Really glad you're here. So we're going to start off with today's video about getting started in leather crafting. I'm going to show you how to do a simple project that is relatively inexpensive in order for you to get started in learning how to do some of the basics around leather crafting. Now this video is very long, so I encourage you to pause it as often as you need in order to be able to either keep up if you're following along or if you're studying some of my techniques. The video is also sped up to about 1.5 speed, so just a little bit faster than normal. I did that in order to try to compress the video, to try to make it as small as possible time frame wise. The important thing here is the message that I'm trying to deliver to you. So if you find that it's going too fast or you need to revisit, please come back and watch the video again at any time. Let's get started with the video. Today I'm going to show you how to make a key ring loop as you begin on your crafting journey. There will be some basic tools you're going to need. I just showed you guys my favorite trimming knife. You will need some stitching chisels. Here are a few of the ones that I have. This one's my favorite from Craft Tool. Picked it up at Tandy Leather. Got the whole set. These are 5mm stitch tools. You'll need a mallet, preferably nylon, a stitch awl, some leather needles, and the camera is having trouble focusing, so here's what a leather needle looks like. A razor blade, preferably something that you trust, or an X-Acto knife. You'll need a ruler. This is my safety ruler. Helps protect my fingers when I'm cutting. Really is a great tool to have. Pick it up on Amazon. It's got a rubber bottom on it so it doesn't slip. Some wax thread. Some all-purpose cement. Some hardware for our keyring loop bottom, and some Chicago screws. You can use rivets if you want, but Chicago screws are much more durable. They can really take a tug. And leather. You can use scrap leather. I'm going to show you a few pieces here with a straight edge. Makes it easy to trim some off. You can use a leather cord, or in this particular case, that's a leather lace. Here's the leather cord, 5mm leather cord. Basically a round leather. This is upholstery leather. Remnants from an upholstery shop. Bought it online. Here are some of the colors I've gotten. You can get a real good mix of remnant pieces of leather that you can make great things out of. So let's get started and clear off the work area. Now you can also use suede remnants. Here's a bag of suede remnants that I picked up from Tandy Leather. This would be a good piece right here to make a key ring loop out of. But we're not going to show you that today. So here's a trimmed off piece of leather. It's kind of uneven, but will make a good core for one of your key ring loops if you wanted to use one. If you've got a completely straight piece, that's great. I'm going to take this piece here and I'm going to trim off about 3 to 4mm using this strap cutting tool. This is a product from Craft Tool, available online, Tandy Leather or Amazon. The way this works, it basically holds a razor blade and you just push it through. Try to keep your pace steady and even so it cuts straight. And it's getting hung up on a thick piece here. And there we go. Yep, that piece will work. Remember, this is going to be your core. This is not going to be seen, so you don't have to worry too much about how perfect it looks. You really want to have a self-healing grid cutting board. You can pick these up online or at your local leather store. When we make this keyring loop, what we're going to do is when we get to a certain point, we're going to need to make a hole, so you're going to need to make sure you get that. Here's another example of another one. You know, depending on the size of the wrist you need to get your keyring loop around, I've got big hands. So, you know, this one would be actually better, and it's obviously much longer, almost 13 inches in length. Whereas in the smaller one, yeah, I'd have a little trouble getting my hand in it, and getting it back out, forget about it. Alright, here's one that's been prepped. This actually used the suede, but we're not going to use this in the demonstration today. What I wanted to show you was how to gauge the length of the piece of leather that you need to cut. Preferably you want a fairly straight edge already. This one right here is a straight edge, and if I put it up against the ruler, it's about 14, 15 inches in length. This straight piece is about a little over 11. And you want your core to be about an inch or two to the inside of your length of your cut. Here's an example of a piece we could use as a core. So with that being good, let's move on. First thing you need to do is you need to cut your leather. Get the piece straight on one side of your ruler. Take your other side of your ruler and your cutting tool, whatever you're going to use. Cut straight down. Got a little bit here on the ends. Just cut that off real quick. The ends don't have to be perfectly square. We're going to be trimming those later on. Now for the part that's going to actually hold on to the key. Now it needs to be somewhere around maybe 3 inches or so. I'm going to grab my X-Acto knife for this example of cutting. Didn't cut all the way, so a couple more strokes, and here we go. Take our big leftover piece and put it to the side. Now for the bottom part of the keyring loop that's going to hold on to the keyring, get it lined up here on the grid. We're going to want it about 1 inch wide. Line the ruler up on the other side of the grid and go ahead and cut it all the way through. We're going to need 2 pieces approximately the same length. Let me see here. Yeah, it's a little bit shy. I'm going to go ahead and use this other side instead. Get it nice and straight. Get us a nice straight cut. And I'll hang on to that. Might be able to find a use for it later. Put my X-Acto knife away for safety. Move my ruler. And now it's time to adhere these pieces to each other. So we're going to kind of try to marry these up, make sure they're the right width, evenly on both sides. Grab our all-purpose cement. We're going to glue that from about 4 inches worth. apply the glue. Try to spread this around evenly as possible. Getting all the way up to the edge. This stuff is really stringy when it starts to tack up from being dry. I'm going to go ahead and put the brush away. Now if you don't have one of these, this is an airbrush. I'm just going to turn on my compressor here and use the airbrush to blow air over the surface of the glue so that it starts to tack up and dry a little bit. We don't want it to dry completely. We just want it to dry some, and what happens with rubber cement is as it dries, it gets tacky. So we've done that, and now we're going to marry these two pieces up. Try to get as close as we can while the glue is still not completely dry. We can kind of manipulate this a little bit, try to get the edges lined up. Take our hammer or mallet or whatever you're going to use, kind of tap this down a little bit. Trying to squeeze this down a little bit more. You may have some glue bubble up on the sides, don't worry. We can take care of that later. Alright, now for our main piece. So what we want here is we want one end, we want to glue all the way to the end. We want to know how long it is. With the grid, it makes it real easy. So on this end over here to the right, that's the end we're going to glue all the way down. Everything in that last inch. Over here, we don't want any glue. So I'm going to take my awl and I'm going to make a mark here on the inside of this leather so I know where to stop with my glue line. Now, if you want to do this, you don't have to. It helps me a little bit as to where to identify the center position. And what I can do now is, based on where that is, I can see that center is just on the inside of that line, and that's where I'm going to put my core. Now this core is a little too long, so I'm going to grab my trimming knife. I'm going to skive it down at an angle on both ends. Give it another quick look. Still a little too long. Let me grab my other knife. This is my other flat knife, my skiving knife. And trim some more off. That was a little too, wasn't shallow enough. This is better. These knives are extremely sharp. I suggest you put them back into your sheath as soon as you're done. Alright. Now we've got it all set up here and we're good to go. Get some of this leather dust off. Grab our all-purpose cement again. Some of that drip off back into the can, and apply our glue. Get it all the way to the edge. Try to get it as evenly spread as you can. Doesn't have to be perfect, but all you got to do is make an effort. It's not that difficult. Need a little bit more glue. And glue all the way to the end. Alright, that should be good. Kick on our little compressor, take our airbrush, get a little bit of air across that, let it tack up pretty good so that it's nice and sticky. If you don't have an airbrush, you can use canned air or just wait. I will apply this down on the inside of the line that we marked. That's about center. Take my hammer, mallet, tap it down a little bit. Alright, then we're going to grab it into our hands and we're going to gently, starting from the middle, we're going to marry up the ends like so. And just squeeze around that core. Squeeze down to one end. Trying to keep the edges lined up as best I can. And then come back towards the other direction. Same thing. Marry up the edges as close as we can. And continue past the core. All right. Now we're all together. So the next thing I want to show you, this is a slicker. This is another common tool that's used. I want to try to see if I can use it to help fold this leather on top of each other. It works okay. It's not my favorite tool to use for this purpose. If you don't have a slicker yet, you can use the end of a Sharpie. Use that end of that Sharpie to get up against the edge of that. Be careful. In this case, I kind of pulled away my edge, so I don't want that. So I'm going to be a little bit more gentle and just kind of press here to make a nice line there on the edge of that core. Make sure my edges are still married up. So that's okay. Another tool you can use is a bone folder. I've got one around here somewhere. There it is. My bone folder is basically a flat piece with almost like an arrow type head on it. This is commonly used in bookbinding. You know, we didn't want to glue this in because we need that end to open, and I'm going to show you guys why in a minute. All right. Now let's get our other piece here that's going to be the bottom, and let's work with it for a little bit. We don't want to keep these ends the way they are. So let's see if we can figure out about how long we want this and how much we're going to trim off. So we're going to trim off this end here and square it. Take my X-Acto knife. Cut all the way through. This upholstery leather is really good, tough stuff. Alright, that looks good. Alright, let's put the cap back on that for safety. Alright, so when this folds up, we want it to have a rounded look. Now, I've got this tool, but I've also got these belt templates. So I'm going to show you how to use the belt template if you want. You can use it to give you a nice round edge, or really anything that's small. It's about 1 inch wide in this particular case that makes a circle or a half circle. Can be used as a guide. So I'm going to try to do this here. Now, this leather is not only tough because it doesn't like to be cut. It's made to work on high. It's leather that's designed to be used in high-end upholstery. And it is a bugger to cut with an X-Acto knife. So let me see if I can get this rounded off. Alright. That came out okay. Now ideally, this is what I would like to use. This is what I use on a regular basis. This half round cutter is great for giving me a nice, clean, smooth, consistent cut. Get all the way through. There we go. We'll just quickly be able to do the other side. Now, if you don't buy these tools in the beginning of your leatherwork, that's fine. You can still use a half circle or a template of some kind, maybe an old pill bottle or something to give you that edge that you need for rounding the corner. Alright, so here we go. This will hold our key ring. So our keyring hardware, you can use different kinds of hardware. You can use a D-ring, like this one with the lobster claw clamp on it, which is my favorite for key rings. That's the one we're going to use in our demonstration today. Now, we got to make our stitch holes. So we get our stitch chisel. This is a 4mm stitch chisel by Craft Tool. And we're going to start at the end, about where we feel that end of that core that we've got in there. And we're going to tap that through until we can feel with our finger there the other side. I want it to go down a little bit more. Yeah, that's better. You can see it now. Then we're going to continue down the line. And the key to keeping a straight line is to line up the 2 holes there. Put our stitch chisel right there in those last 2 holes. And that helps ensure that our line stays straight. Try to keep it close to the core while still maintaining a straight line. Putting the last 2 prongs or a stitch chisel in the last 2 holes in the line. And just move right on down the line. Takes no time at all. Alright, now we're almost at the end here, and we don't want to put a hole beyond the end of that core, so we're going to see if we can find the best position to be as close as possible, but not being over. And that will be our last stitch holes. Alright, now we're ready to start stitching. So we're going to grab our thread. Now you want the thread to be about 4 to 5 times the length of your project. So just pulled that away, took a stretch of it, give it a good cut, grab our needle, and thread the needle. And then we take our thread, pull it through. We don't tie a knot. What we do is we puncture the center of that thread with the end of our needle and bring it down. Apologize the camera being out of focus. Here we go. And once we've done that, pull it down until it loops. Do the same thing to the other side, and we are going to do this because we are going to do a saddle stitch. You need 2 needles and a single piece of thread. You could use 2 different color threads if you wanted, tied in the middle, but not this project. Alright, you have the option to stitch this by hand. So if you do, what you have to do is you got to keep the tension on the needle. So you go in through one end, bring it all the way through, hold it down with your thumb, take the other needle, push it through, keep the tension on it with your other finger, and you can go on down the line. Now, I prefer to use what's called a stitch pony. Here's my stitch pony. It allows me to focus less on the hand that's holding the tension. It allows me to just maintain the tension as I thread. Proper tension is really important for the look of your stitch. You want it to be consistent. You want it to look the same, and the amount of tension as you push and pull through this is, you want to keep it consistent as possible. Alright, we are getting through the project. Here's another view, what it will look like on top. I stick both needles through when I'm doing my saddle stitch like this and pull at the same time. That way I keep from accidentally piercing the thread with the opposing needle. If you've never done a saddle stitch before, I'll put a link in the description of another YouTuber who does a great job at explaining how to do a saddle stitch. Here's another top view of using the saddle stitch, or using the saddle pony, or stitch pony. Now we're at the end. We have to do our back stitch. This can only be done one needle and thread at a time. The hole has gotten significantly tight as a result of going through already with a thread twice. So we're going to very carefully try to stay away from piercing the thread with the needle if we can help it. And we're going to back stitch 3 to 4. 3 to 4 stitches back. Now that we've got 3 stitches back, now we need to trim our ends. So the first thing I do is I need to get a knot on here. So I'm going to go underneath one of the stitches, back through the other side of my thread, and pull it to a knot. Do the same thing with the other thread. That's one of the double back stitches. That's a hard one to get to. There we go. And again, pull it to a knot. Yeah, that one was a little, that didn't go as great as I had hoped. I'm going to pull it through one more time, try to get a better knot. That'll have to work. This one is definitely not ideal. Alright, so I'm going to get my thread zap. This is what I'll use to trim the ends. Gets a little coil, it gets a little hot there at the tip, and melts right through that polyester cord. Gives me a nice clean finish on the cut. Make sure it's melted down. Push it down with one of my tools. That was my slicker. Alright, let's get the cap back on the thread zapper and put it away. Alright, there's our excess thread, which we will still need for the last part of our project, where we'll be doing a little bit of stitching, and that is for the key fob. Alright, so I'm going to use these wing dividers to give me an even line here on the inside of this to try to gauge where I'm going to put my stitch line. I'm going to put a few stitches in this, mostly decorative, so that this looks consistent with the rest of the key loop. I'm going to get my smallest chisel. Let me see if I can punch through both of these evenly. I'm just going to follow that line that I made, that I scored in with the wing divider. In order to get this bend, this arc, we're just going to use not only the line as a gauge, but we're going to put our stitch chisel, just like we were doing with the longer one, but in the hole behind, to ensure that we're maintaining appropriate distancing consistent with the rest of the project. Okay, we've got our stitch holes. Put our D-ring back on, and it's time to, I think I'm going to take this one down just a little bit further. So now we're going to get our hole punch to put our Chicago screw through. And we're going to put it there in the middle between where the stitch line was. Just right there in the middle. Just really kind of going to guesstimate this. When it looks and feels like it's in the right spot, I'm just going to go ahead and punch all the way through. There we go. Alright, now we're going to get our project piece, and I'm going to show you guys how to get the hole punched here. So first we need to trim off some of this excess. So we're going to try to get a gauge on how these marry up. We're going to get it to where that last stitch is in line with the edge, the inside edge, and we're going to take our awl and make a mark on the leather so we know how much to trim. And see, what we're going to do is we're going to squeeze this flat piece that we glued together into the unglued section on the inside. So to do that, we need to trim off not only the excess on the tip, but on this inside piece as well. And if you don't make this particular cut pretty, don't worry about it. It's going to be hidden. I'm going to trim this side as well so that it's as close to even as possible. Put the cap back on the blade, and you see how that marries in there just like that. And then we're going to put the hole there in the middle for the Chicago screw to go through. So we'll get the hole punch. Trying to position my hand inside the camera's view. There we go. Alright. Get it in the middle of that V so that it goes all the way through, and squeeze. Yep, went all the way through. So now let's show you guys how this is going to be held together. So there's the Chicago screw from earlier. Alright, so what we have discovered here is that that Chicago screw is not going all the way through. So we need our hole to be a little bit bigger. So grab our hole punch. We're going to open that hole up some more. Alright, let's test it out. Yep. That side's good. So let me get this excess leather off. Now we got to be real careful here not to cut ourselves. X-Acto knives are extremely sharp. Quick test all the way through, and that is good. And we'll need to do the same thing here. Alright, back to our leftover needle and thread. Starting from the inside, we're not going to do we're going to mimic a saddle stitch, but this is more decorative. It's not going to be as strong, so we're going to go in through the inside, the part that's going to be facing the inside and not seen. We're going to come all the way through. Go back in through the other side. And just like when we first put the thread on the needle, we're going to pierce the thread instead of trying to make a knot, like so. Get this tool out of the way. Then we're going to go through the next hole, and then through the other side. Notice this is leaving a gap. Unlike the saddle stitch, it doesn't leave a gap. That's basically because we're going to do this twice. And then we come back through the other side, and we start to fill the gap as we move along. I've heard other people call this kind of the leapfrog method, but it's not as strong as a saddle stitch. We really just kind of want this on there to kind of hold our glued leather together at this particular point. Also for consistency, to match the rest of our project. You can take creative licensing here if you'd like. And we're going to go make sure we get doubled up here. Basically, there's going to be 2 stitches on each side when we're done. And we finish it off by making a knot. Now earlier I showed you guys my thread zap, but I also want to show you that you don't have to have a thread zap. You can just cut it off, use a lighter to melt that end. You can also see when you use the lighter against this thread, it kind of darkens up. That melts a little bit of the wax in the wax thread and gives it a richer tone. Alright, take the leftover thread from the other side. Do the same thing. Pierce the thread. And go through each hole, leapfrogging our way through our stitch line. Once again, we're going to basically double stitch this and go through each hole twice. So we have 2 stitches on each side. And if you want to do a saddle stitch on this, that's fine. It's just the leftover thread that I have here is not long enough to put a needle on both ends to do a proper saddle stitch from experience. This is something I've learned. going to finish this out. Good or not. Take our scissors. Go ahead and trim both of these. I'm going to use my lighter again. And since this is going to be on the inside, it's not super important to get it perfect here. Because you're not going to see it. Alright, let's clear the work area a little bit. Get our scrap leather out of the way. And let's put this together. So first I got to figure out which side do I want to be front. And we want the smooth side of our Chicago screw to be on that side. So we're going to go through the front. Now this comes to a point here as a result of how this works, and I'm going to try to put it together as is and see how it turns out. I'm going to show you guys what it looks like with that point on the inside. Get my flathead screwdriver ready. I'm holding the screw from the opposite side so that it doesn't twist as I'm tightening down. And wow, I got my hand around it. Now can I get my hand out of it? Yay, magic. Alright, so here's what the piece looks like finished. This is a little long, but depending on what you want in this part, if you want to shorten it, I can show you how to do that. So like I said, if you want to shorten it, it's not that difficult. So just go back and get whatever tool you use to make your rounded piece and take about a 1/2 inch off. Make your stitch holes on the side that you cut. Get your thread if you have any leftover thread. If not, get your thread out. Make sure we get the inside part right. And with your new holes, sometimes you gotta push your needle through the other side just to be able to get the hole to look right. You know, I don't think I punched enough holes in this. I don't need that. I need my stitch chisel. Yep, I went ahead and did that. So, didn't finish it perfectly, so let me go back here real quick and get this lined up. Yep, definitely need to add a couple more holes. Push our needle through our thread to make our loop. And we're going to leapfrog our way through these stitch holes real quick. Now that we've got that done, let's go ahead and put this back together. Now, that looks a little better in my opinion. If you want, you can put a drop of glue once you know you're finished into the threads of your Chicago screw to help it from wiggling its way out over time. Before we wrap up this video, I want to show you guys what would happen if you tried to use a key ring instead of a D-ring. It doesn't fit right, so what you have to do is you have to remove some material from the middle to allow it to do so. And you can use your grid to kind of show you where the middle is. Use a smaller half round chisel cut like so. And just remove a little bit of the material from the middle. If those two half pieces line up pretty well, then you know you did it fairly well and right. And then we just pull that through, and now that key ring will hold just fine if you choose to use a different hardware. While we're getting ready to wrap this up, if you enjoyed watching this video, please click on the like button and share it with your friends, subscribe. I'm going to have some other descriptive information down below that you can check out, including links to material, hardware, things that I've used in this video, as well as other YouTubers with instructional videos that I have found helpful whenever I had to go look for information. Thank you so much for watching. You guys have a good one. Come back and see us soon. Thanks again for watching, everybody. Don't forget, hit that like button, mash subscribe, and click that notification bell so that you can see every video that we upload. I'm going to be trying to do these about once every other week. So I hope to see you guys again soon. Thank you very much for visiting our channel.